Before we get started on what's going to be a really wonderful day of mindful service here, I just wanted to spend a few minutes and share with you some perspectives and experiences that I've had in working with this project here. My name is Ed Earl, and I have the honor and the privilege of being the construction project manager here at Deer Park Monastery in Escondido, California. I have been in the construction industry for about 25 years. And I went on my first retreat with Thich, Nhat, Hanh 18 years ago. For me, though, I've always had my practice and I've incorporated that into my personal life. But my profession and what I did in the construction industry was always separate. The amazing miracle of this project is what it's done to be able to bring my understanding of mindfulness practices back into my profession, and my dream is to actually bring it into the construction industry as well. Just to give you a quick orientation of what we have here, we've constructed 4 buildings. They're all being constructed out of straw bale construction. These 3 buildings here are going to be residences for the sisters. We have sleeping quarters as well as bathrooms and laundry and shower facilities. And then this building over here is going to be the residence for our Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh when he is here visiting at Deer Park Monastery. I want to talk about the 3 concepts of mindfulness and how they relate to this project. So the first is Thich Nhat Hanh's concept of inner being and how that relates to sustainable design. The second is our concept of mindful consumption and how that interplays so beautifully with straw bale construction and with natural building. And then the third is the mindful concept of mindful communication and deep listening, and how I've been able to incorporate that into the construction management here and into my profession as a construction project manager. What I've done in my role in construction for about the last 15 years is I have been an owner's construction project manager. So I'm hired typically by people that are building custom homes or doing high-end remodels, very complex remodels. There's a whole crew of people that are involved in these kinds of projects, and the architect and the interior designer, the landscape architect and the lighting designer and the general contractor and all the subcontractors, and my clients are usually traveling all over and very busy, and so I manage that whole process for them. And while I've always felt like that was a good match for my gifts and my talents and skills, at the end of the day, when I'm done building these giant mansions, there was always something a little bit empty feeling. And knowing that what I've created here is this monument to someone's ego, these giant buildings. And so when I come and practice here and we talk about the second mindfulness training and right livelihood, there was always kind of this hollow spot because I felt like what I was creating was definitely not in harmony with that. It really wasn't what I felt was right livelihood. So I'll share a little bit more with you at the end about how I've changed that. So let's talk about the first concept, the concept of inner being and how that relates to sustainable design. When I build these big estate homes, for the most part, the way that people look at those is, you kind of have the house and everything around it serves the house, right? So you have your lot, you clear everything off, you put your house there, and then you make everything else work for that house. With sustainable design, you turn that completely around, right? You look at the site and you look at the surroundings and you find the way that the house can truly interbe with its surroundings. Because we all know that we're all connected anyway, right? I mean, the house is not this separate entity. It truly is a part of the surroundings, and the surroundings are part of the house. And that's the way that you approach sustainable design. So on this project, we've been so fortunate to have a very talented architecture team of Hubbell and Hubbell, based here locally in San Diego, Drew Hubbell, and then his father, James Hubbell, who's also a very famous artist. Many of you may know James Hubbell and some of his artwork, but they're also very talented architects, and they truly understand the concepts of sustainable design. So if you look at these buildings here, they're put together in a semicircle, and they face towards the sun. And I love how Drew describes, he said, my buildings are like flowers. They turn towards the sun. And the reason for that is during the winter months, like now when it's cool, you want that wonderful warmth from the sun. And so when the sun is low in the horizon, what happens is, if you notice, we have windows and they all face this direction. And the largest windows, like this window right here, you see how big that window is. That's intentional, because what we want is we want this wonderful warmth from the sun to come in and warm these buildings during the day. And then at night, we have this super insulated structure. Once the sisters close the doors, that warmth will stay inside these structures. Also, the way that the roof is orientated as well, because during the summer, when it's hot here, the sun is more directly overhead, and that's why Hubbell and Hubbell designed these buildings with metal roofs, because the heat from the sun will actually reflect off during the summer months. The buildings are also situated to take advantage of the wonderful breeze that we get, the coastal breeze that comes up the valley here. So you'll notice that there are clear story windows above many of the doors here. And the reason for that is during the summer when things are hot, at night when things cool off, the sisters can open those clear story windows. The hot air will escape. That wonderful cool breeze will come in. And then in the morning when they shut the windows and the doors, our super insulated structure will keep that nice cool air in the buildings. Also, for me, with construction background, a civil engineer, when they look at stormwater and rainwater, their whole purpose is like to take that water, get it into the rain gutters, sheet it off into the deck drains, and get it out to the curb and out to the storm drains and out of the site as quickly as possible. It's like water's the enemy. And, here we don't look at it that way, right? I mean, we all know, we're from Southern California, water is like gold, right? It's precious. So we're working with gray water consultants and sustainable consultants so that we can have catch basins and cisterns and areas that we can actually receive this water and keep it here on the site. So now let me talk a little bit about the second mindfulness concept that I want to talk about, and that's mindful consumption and how that relates so wonderfully to green building and particularly straw bale construction. So this is my first straw bale project. I've never done one before. And when I first met Mike and Rebecca about a year ago and I saw the first straw bale building, I have to say, as a building professional, I was a little bit skeptical, right? I mean, we've all heard the story of the 3 little pigs and what happened with their straw bale house, right? So, and you look around here, we're obviously in a high fire risk area, and I'm thinking, why would you build out of straw? It's the first flame, they're going to go up in flames. What I want to talk about is, for me, the 3 amazing things that happen when you build out of straw bale. The first is that the whole materials that you use change, right? It starts with the straw bale, but the straw bale is just the catalyst to change everything else within these buildings. There's no gypsum sheetrock on the interior walls. There's no Portland cement on the outside. Obviously no fiberglass insulation in between the walls. When you go through these buildings, you'll see there's no ductwork. There's no air registers because you really don't need that kind of ventilation here. There's no paint on the walls. So you've done a couple of things. First off, you're building your buildings out of straw and dirt. If you look at mindful consumption and recognize that you take only what you need and only what you use, how much of a lighter footprint that you make by building homes out of straw and earth and not have all of these man-made materials that take a lot of energy to make them, to transport them here and all of that. And then, and Rebecca will speak more about this, also has health benefits as well and how living in these structures are much more healthy. Now, the second thing that straw bale does that is also, I think, amazing is it changes the way that we build these buildings. Straw bale is not an overly technical process. Although you're going to find out today, it's not just like stacking straw on top of each other. The difference is that you can do what we've done today. You can bring the community out and invite them to participate in building your home. Drew Hubbell calls it like an Amish barn raising, right, where the community gets together and builds these buildings. So, when each of you leave today, you'll leave with the knowledge that your mindful hands created a lasting presence here at the monastery, right? You were part of building the nuns' residences here. So the third thing that straw bale does, and this is the part that I found the most amazing and when I entered my first room with straw bale, is the space that it creates. I believe that when you enter a room that's constructed of straw and covered with earth and clay plaster, at some primordial level, your body senses that. You walk into this room and your body just knows from your ancestors, from thousands of years, we've lived among these natural materials. And your body just relaxes. It doesn't need to be on alert. It's not smelling strange things. And your body just relaxes. And then Hubble and Hubble have gone beyond that because in the way that they've designed these buildings. Nature doesn't design with straight walls and 90-degree angles, and neither do Hubble and Hubble. So if you look at these buildings, not only are they situated in a circle, but the walls are actually curved. All of the front and back walls are curved. The roofs aren't flat, they're sloping. So when you go into these spaces, even today without all the straw in, they'll just feel natural to you. They'll feel like a natural space. And it's because of that spacing and that sizing that Hubble and Hubble have done. So what that creates is that, the straw bale and the earth and clay creates this very peaceful, quiet atmosphere. And then the straw bale, the super insulation, creates this just amazingly quiet rooms, this solidity and this stillness that you feel when you enter a straw bale room. And I can't think of a better context for a community here that practices meditation and mindfulness than to be able to live inside of these straw bale structures. So let me move to my third concept, and that's the concept of mindful communication and how that really impacts how we do our construction management here at this project at the monastery, and really what I do as a construction project manager. In my experience in the past, typically construction management, it's almost like a military operation, right? The architect draws the plans and he passes it on to the contractor, and the contractor's committed to a certain budget and a schedule, and he passes the marching orders out to the subcontractors, and it's this very linear, competitive process. And it's not based on trust. The owners go out and they want to get 3 bids because they don't trust that they're going to get the best price from one person. And, there's no openness. The contractors submit sealed bids because they don't want anyone else to see their numbers. And, I think now looking back at it, I think what the construction industry is trying to do is they're trying to reduce the amount of conflict that happens in construction by kind of reducing everyone's responsibility. Each person is responsible for one certain segment. But what I find is I think it actually increases conflict, because what happens is when something changes, when something goes wrong, then there's the blame game. Who's going to take the blame? Is it the architect? Is it the builder? Is it, who is it? We didn't want to work that way here. And so from the very outset, I was really encouraged to try to employ our mindfulness practices here. And instead of, typically you invite one contractor up at a time, you'd meet with them confidentially. Instead, what we did is we brought all the contractors out, all together, and we invited the contractors to come and sit in a circle. And we invited the bell, and we introduced the basic concepts of going back to your breath and stopping and being mindful. Then later, after that meeting, I was approached by one of the contractors that was there. And he came to me and he said, "Ed, I saw the contractors that are in that room. I understand this project, and I'm just not even going to submit a proposal because I know, I'm not going to be the low price bid, and there's just no way I'm going to get this job, so I won't do it." And I had the courage to have a conversation with this general contractor that I've never had before in my construction industry. And I was just very open and honest with Chuck. And I said, Chuck, I've been around this practice for a long time. And I know that the sisters, they don't think in terms of months or years. They're thinking in terms of generations, of centuries and decades, not just about, who's going to build this the fastest and the least expensive way possible. They're really looking at it from a broader perspective. They are looking at, what's the best for us at the monastery and us as a community, and what's the best thing for San Diego and for the nation and really for the world. And if you take that perspective, it's not all about just getting that lowest bid and building it as fast as possible. So I said, I really think you're going to be a great fit for this project, and I really would encourage you to submit a proposal, and submit it the way you want, with the quality that you believe should be here and the way that you would do this work. Submit your proposal and let's see what happens. And so he did, and guess what? He got the job. What that's done for me, and in working on this project for the last year, is it's made me realize, hey, I can carry this beyond the walls of the monastery here. I can really bring this out into the other jobs that I have. And my dream is to really bring it out to the construction industry in general. So what I've developed is I've coined a term called collaborative construction. And that's really in marked contrast from what I call competitive construction, which is the old school way of doing it. So collaborative construction is really based on open communication, our mindful concept of open communication, deep listening and loving speech. And so what happens is that in my projects, everyone at the table has a voice, right? Everyone is empowered to speak their piece and to contribute. So if there's a subcontractor on a job and he thinks he's got a better way of doing something, or he looks at something and goes, why are they doing it this way? He doesn't just do it that way. He's empowered to go to the superintendent and say, hey, you know, I think there's a better way of doing things. And the superintendent is empowered to go back to the contractor, and the contractor is to go to the architect and say, hey, there might be a better way of doing things here. So, you know, collaborative construction, it's based on trust, it's based on cooperation, shared values, and shared purposes. And so what ends up happening out of collaborative construction is that you create this harmony that unfortunately is oftentimes missing in our industry. And it creates lasting relationships. You end up building relationships with trades and people that you use ongoingly over time. It's just such a difference than competitive construction, and it's really transformed the way that I approach things. It's become my passion, and I've reprinted my business cards. It actually says collaborative construction on my business cards. I've discovered a cloud-based construction project management system that I use on my iPad and my iPhone. I use it with my builders, and the owners have it, and the trades, and everyone. We all share communication. We share documents and information all through this cloud-based system. I was at the International Builders Show in Las Vegas this week, talking to a lot of people about collaborative construction and really sharing my vision of collaborative construction and how I think that it can transform the construction industry. Let me now finish kind of where I started. I think you're kind of getting the conclusion here, which is, you know, when I was the construction manager for these estate homes and feeling like I wasn't doing right livelihood, you know, I really thought I was going to have to quit my job and do something totally different. And a year and a half ago, when Thich, Nhat, Hanh was here, I came to the retreat, and I remember sharing with a Sangha brother of mine this struggle that I had. It was the night after we talked about the mindfulness trainings. And I told him, I said, you know, I think I'm going to just quit my job. I mean, construction is really down right now anyway. I don't have many projects going on. I've got to, you know, find a new career. And then the next night, Sister Hung Yem got up and talked about this project. And they were looking for people to come and help get the project off the ground. They had designed it, but they hadn't been able to get the construction going. And so I raised my hand. I said, you know, I'm in construction. I'd be happy to help. Little did I know that that was the beginning of a major transformation for me in my life. What's happened now in this last year is really, truly amazing. And for me, it was all just about changing my perspective, changing the way I looked at things. You know, I didn't need to quit my job. I didn't need to change my profession or go join a nonprofit. I just had to look at things differently. I had to look at what I did differently. I had to look at what my industry did differently. And now I have this whole new approach. I have a whole new lease on life. And a real passion and a commitment to bring this collaborative construction out into the world and to share what I've learned here at the monastery in the last year. I just want to encourage and maybe inspire some of you that might be struggling with your own issues about right livelihood and what can I do to be more in alignment with my mindfulness principles. I just want to encourage you that it may just take thinking about things differently, looking at things differently. You may not need to quit your job or go start a nonprofit or do something that different, but just take what you do and look at it with new eyes. Look at it with a new perspective. Bring your mindfulness concepts to your life and your business. Thank you very much for your attention and your mindful service today. Thank you very much.